Hello book nerds, welcome to Bookshelf Bunny. I'm Kim and today is July's wrap-up. Hey guys, so for the month of July I focused on 2 different books. Although technically one of those books is made up of 6 smaller books. Allow me to explain. The first thing I read this month was a serial novel by John Saul, The Blackstone Chronicles. And this series is made up of each of these. This guy, this guy, and this guy. So 6 different books that make up one story, a serial novel. So if you're familiar with Stephen King, then you know when he released Green Mile, it was a similar format. He released pieces of it, small stories that make up the bigger story. And that's exactly what happened here. In fact, in the introduction of this series, John Saul talks about how he was inspired to write this series because of Stephen King's serial novel. So while it was technically 6 different books, they were all very short and small and contained one giant story. So overall, I would give this series a 4 out of 5. And I only say 4 out of 5 because the first installment didn't really grip me. I individually rated that one 3 out of 5. But the rest, as the story progressed, got more and more interesting. And so each of the subsequent serial novels I gave 5 out of 5s. So the overarching story in John Saul's serial novel, Blackstone Chronicles, is a small town that used to be, its main commerce came from an insane asylum. Ooh, spooky. This insane asylum, it had a series of incidents where the doctors mistreated the patients. The idea is that it created a bad energy that has persisted and kind of haunted the area. But more so, it haunted specific items. And the last remaining family member whose family has historically owned this building is selling it. He wants to sell the asylum, tear it down a little bit, spruce it up, and turn it into a community center, like a mall. A place for new business and to continue to serve the community. However, as the story progresses, we learn that there's a mysterious figure pulling items out of the abandoned asylum and gifting them to people within the town. And each item is cursed. And the family that gets the item, terrible things happen. So the first one's a doll, there's a lighter, there's a locket, etc., etc. And as we go, we get to be deeper into these characters and the history of this town. And it was really interesting. The characters are pretty dynamic. I really enjoyed them. One character in particular, I really loved her. Her name was Rebecca, and she just stood out to me as a real person. And I was so worried throughout the entire novel that she was going to get one of these damn items. It just built up this anxiety because you come to know the people. And every time an item is sent out, there's that moment of, oh no, not so-and-so. It was really unique to read a serial novel. I've never read this type of book before, and I really enjoyed it. It was unique. The next thing I read was Stephen King's Billy Summers, this chunker here. This is just over 500 pages, so after I finished the serial novel, it took me a couple of weeks to get through Billy Summers, but well worth it. Well worth it. I started reading it a couple weekends ago while it was super hot and gorgeous, and I had a little backyard beach day, and I continued from there until it was finished. So if you watched that video, you kind of get a a basic synopsis for the overall story. There's a couple of things I wanted to point out as well. So for those of you who haven't seen that video, the basic idea is that it follows Billy Summers, who is a hitman. He used to be in the military in Iraq as a sniper, and he just kind of carried that over into his profession after he left his service. So this is his final job. And like all final job tropes, we know it's not going to end well. And he also kind of has a feeling it's not going to end well. And all sorts of shenanigans do ensue that put him on a path to getting rid of the big bad who orchestrated this last hit. That kind of went to shit for him a little bit. But as we go, we get to really know Billy Summers. The entire thing is told from his perspective until the very end. And my favorite part is that part of his disguise for his final job was as a writer, and he actually kind of gets into writing for real as he does this job and ends up finishing his own memoir, a life story based off of his history. And it was really fascinating. Billy is a great character. Billy is a hitman with a moral code. Let me backtrack a smidge. A hitman with a moral code. So he only wants to off bad people. And I loved that about him. It made him a very relatable, empathetic character. I gave it a 4 out of 5, and the only reason I gave it a 4 out of 5 is because the pacing was a little bit slow. But everything else was interesting, and the story was engaging, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely recommend it. There was a couple little Easter eggs for my fellow Stephen King fans. At some point, he comes across the general area of the Overlook Hotel. And for those of you who are not familiar, the Overlook Hotel is the haunted hotel from The Shining. And that's what I read this month. These were all very good reads. If you haven't read a serial novel before, I haven't read Green Mile yet. I've only seen the movie. And the copy of Green Mile that I have isn't the serial version. It's like a all-together version. But this was a unique way of doing things. Really enjoyed it. Highly recommend reading John Saul's Blackstone Chronicles. And I also recommend Billy Summers. That was my reading month. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments. Have any of you read a serial novel before, be it Green Mile by Stephen King or this beauty? What did you think of it as a format for novel writing? That's it from me, book nerds. And as always, happy reading!